You've heard the best, now here's the rest. These are the bottom 15 movies of 2023, or if you prefer, the top 15 worst films of 2023. Much like the top 15, if I didn't see the movie, it can't be on the ranking, and unlike the last one, which had Five Nights at Freddy's, I reviewed every single one that's on this list. But before we get into those, here's a few honorable mentions. Saw X, you sucked. Migration, you were ass. 65, a waste of a good premise. 57 seconds, I wish that's how long the movie was. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Disaster. Knock at the Cabin. Ruby Gilman, Teenage Kraken, and The Monkey King. And probably about a dozen others could have made the list, but I decided to keep it as short as possible. With that said, let's jump into the bottom 15 of 2023. Just because a movie is original doesn't mean it's good. I saw so many people claim this movie is a masterpiece because it's original sci-fi. Again, that doesn't mean it was good sci-fi. This is one of the most forgettable movies I saw all year. I barely remember a thing about it other than I think it was supposed to be a allegory for machines have feelings and all the other shit. I am having trouble even remembering a damn thing about this movie. I even went back and watched my review, and I've already forgotten pretty much everything about this movie. But I remember the story being stupid, the characters are just whatever, the action sequences were nothing special, and the twist was not only extremely predictable, but was just straight up nonsense. My first and probably last Fast and the Furious movie. I know these movies are kind of synonymous for big, over-the-top stunts that make no goddamn sense, but this movie was just straight up awful. The acting out of pretty much everybody was terrible. Vin Diesel was underacting while Jason Momoa was overacting. The stunts were just fine, the CGI looked atrocious, and the plot was absolute nonsense. I did not have fun with this movie. Maybe if I'd seen the other ones I would have liked it a bit more, but I have a hard time believing that because it's just a straight up bad movie in and of itself. Would I like the other Fast and Furious movies? I have no idea, but I have a hard time believing they'd be worse than this. Much like a couple other movies on this list that we will get to later, people were eating this shit up. Not just critics, but audiences as well. And I do not understand it. Nothing about this movie worked. I didn't like the animation, it looked really cheap. The voice acting was incredibly annoying out of the Turtles, and everybody else was just passable, I guess. The villain was lame, and his plan didn't really make any sense, and was kind of a rip-off of other movies that did it a lot better. And the woke propaganda was all over this movie, including a kind of disturbing relationship that comes about at the end of the movie. And do I even need to bring up April O'Neil? That character model was probably even worse than Spider-Man 2's Mary Jane. And that says a lot. It's quite astonishing to see Disney sink to new lows every single year. Don't get me wrong, this probably isn't the absolute worst film they've put out in the last few years. Hell, there's a couple more on this list, at least one more. So that tells you all you need to know, but this movie was just straight up forgettable. The supposed heroine was the real villain of this movie. The villain of this movie was kind of the real hero here. The conflict more than the plot, is created by the character making stupid and selfish decisions, and none of the characters are likable, the songs are forgettable, and the plot is just straight up retarded. Disney, do better. Or better, quit shoving woke propaganda into your films, and focus on trying to make a good film. And I don't think making 2 more Frozen movies is the way to do it. Bruce Willis's final movie did not allow him to go out with a bang, but instead more akin to a wet fart. What the hell was this movie? The editing is some of the most heinous shit I've seen since Flashback. The plot made absolutely no sense, and the twist at the end was absolutely preposterous. Not to mention the acting out of pretty much everybody was blander than a blank piece of paper, and I forgot about the movie shortly after reviewing it. But the only reason it's on this list is because I had written it down that I had seen it. Otherwise, I would have forgotten this movie even existed. Bruce Willis deserved so much better. I honestly would have hated this movie less if it was just a straight-up rip on Avatar: The Last Airbender. Hell, I'd probably rather watch the M. Night Shyamalan Last Airbender. Don't get me wrong, it's a piece of shit movie, but at least it didn't piss me off. This movie had so much potential to it, and they make the lame as hell story of a girl trying to save her father's shop from being shut down. This vast world filled with the different elements, and that's the best you can come up with? Combined with Disney's signature woke pandering, and this movie can burn in hell. Like I said with Disney, DC just keeps finding new ways to sink itself lower and lower and lower. None of the characters in this are likable, especially the main character, Kara Zor-El. The twist that Mon-El was the villain was obvious from the second he showed up on screen, and we knew they were gonna put Kara and Brainiac 5 together because most of the movie was just them engaging in a pissing match, which made me not like either of them, so me not giving a shit when they ultimately accomplished absolutely nothing by the end of the movie. This felt like an entire fucking waste of time, and the Tomorrowverse better improve with Crisis on Infinite Earths. Though I don't have high hopes. I really liked the first Spider-Verse movie, but holy shit was this bad. The entire concept of the multiverse was destroyed by the stupid canon events concept, and all the people who say that Miguel was lying to Miles the entire time, that's obviously not true, because anytime something is changed in the multiverse, the thing collapses, just like he said it does, so that's basically just deflection and not a defense. Again, nobody's likable here, not even the heroes, and there's pandering all over this piece of shit. The animation isn't nearly as good as the first one because it just keeps flashing different colors on screen for no goddamn reason, and the entire thing is just one half a movie. Fuck Sony. Damn it, I wanted to like this one. Well, it was clear from the trailer that the CGI was god-awful, like some of the worst I've ever seen. I could have let that go if the movie had a strong script, and I bit the whole original sci-fi thing with the trailer for this movie, hoping that it would be something really unique. It was not. This was one of the most boring movies I saw all year, which tells you a lot considering I don't even think this thing crossed the hour-and-a-half mark. None of the characters were interesting. Like I said, the CGI was atrocious, and this is yet another movie that sets up for a sequel that will never happen. God, can we get some good sci-fi for once? And I don't think the new Star Wars movies is gonna be it. This movie was DC's death sentence. The presence of Ezra Miller doesn't help this movie at all, but even if you had cast a new actor here, everything is bad with this movie. The CGI is atrocious, there's practically no practical effects to be found, might I add. The story is a convoluted mess because they try to do something new with time travel, but then ditch that at the end of the movie. The villain is fucking lame and only shows up twice. And the acting is pretty bad outside of maybe Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck, and this movie, much like every other DCEU movie, just feels pointless because it's not going to lead to anything in the DCU. Thank God this movie bombed. When even Disney's Star Wars rejects your movie, you know it's gotta be bad. Edgelord Star Wars by Zack Snyder was a terrible concept to begin with, and it's somehow even worse in execution because it's just straight up boring. 2 hours and 15 minutes of getting virtually nothing accomplished and ripping off a goddamn Bug's Life. I know that wasn't intentional, but he still managed to pull it off, and that's pretty impressive. All the acting is boring, the effects are bad, the story is just a convoluted mess, and it, again, is just a part one, so it leads to absolutely nothing. Netflix, fix your shit. The only way this movie could have worked is if it had been a dark comedy. However, Reese Frick Waterfield wanted us to take this movie seriously, and for that, this movie is hot trash. Reese Frick Waterfield and the public domain go together about as well as peanut butter and peanut allergies. This movie is it's just a train wreck. I was trying to think of something meaner, but that's about all I can come up with. It's a train wreck. The acting's bad, the story's stupid, and again, it sets up for a sequel that's going to be just as bad. I never thought I'd say this, but Disney, get the rights back. Talk about being doomed from the first trailer. I made a video on the first trailer, and much like everybody else, Disney actually struck my video for using footage. They were that desperate to silence any criticism of it. Now, we could talk endlessly about Race Swap Tinkerbell, or The Lost Vase, or just the fact that Hook looks ridiculous. But all in all, this movie is just a straight-up bad remake. I don't remember a single damn thing about it, and the simple fact that these children who have never actually fought with swords are able to take on pirates who have been fighting with swords for God knows how long is just straight-up ridiculous. The effects are terrible, the story's bland, and I will say it wasn't a shot-for-shot remake of Peter Pan, but honestly I would have preferred that at this point. Speaking of shot-for-shot remakes, The Little Mermaid is pretty much that. It does the same thing The Lion King does, where it does the original movie basically shot for shot, but then tries to pad out the running time for the sake of making it look like it's different. But it's not. Like I said, the movie's beat for beat exactly the same, the CGI is terrible, all of the acting is bad, Halle Bailey isn't good as Ariel, Daveed Diggs is terrible as Sebastian, and Awkwafina's presence ruins any movie. And do I even need to mention the Scuttlebutt song that was mocked endlessly on the internet? I don't think I do. Not to mention, this movie makes Prince Eric look like a useless moron throughout the entire film, and considering they added a new song for Ariel to sing in her head because they clearly didn't trust the actress to be able to emote without saying anything, that's a death sentence to your movie right then and there. What the hell else was it going to be? This is, hands down, the cringiest fucking movie I have ever been subjected to. This woke, man-hating piece of garbage is one of the most insufferable things I've ever sat through, and oh man, I don't even want to talk about it. Like, I could talk endlessly about it, but there's a reason my review of this movie was so short. It could have been an hour and a half just going over every single fucking thing I hate about this movie, and I could do that right now, but I just don't want to talk about this movie because it's just so cringy and just straight up terrible. Fuck this movie, and fuck Warner Brothers. Well, that wraps it up for 2023, and I'm looking forward to 2024. Hopefully there will be more good movies than bad, unlike this year. And this is tradition, let's look ahead. What do we got? Okay. That looks promising. Alright. Yes! Okay, I know where this joke is going. Time to show the bad ones. Oh. Oh! Oh my god! Ah! You gotta be fucking kidding me. Could it get any worse? I spoke too soon.